A retweet is not necessarily an endorsement, but a heart, that is necessarily an endorsement.
Jack Dorsey, I'm looking at you.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, vlogging at you again from my car. And for those of you who may not know the history of why I vlog from my car, it initially started as something of a gag in the early days of the lockdown. I would have to take a kid for a drive so he would nap in the back, and I would create content in the front and remain productive. We are now entering almost a full year of a lockdown that was initially sold to us as being a 2-week lockdown to flatten the curve, and it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. We are going to find out this afternoon if our kids go back to school this month. And while it does at times, if not at all times, feel like we are being governed either by incompetence or corruption or a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, there really isn't much more you can do other than try and laugh it off, although trying to smile at certain times feels a little bit like that scene in Face Off. That, and looking at it on the bright side, the acoustics in the car are awesome, but let's get to today's vlog. Today's vlog mixes a little bit of Twitter etiquette with how to read the news and how to read through fake news and how to do your own research to come to your own conclusions, but it starts with a tweet. Actually, it started with an incident which led to the tweet, but let's start with the tweet from Josh Hawley from Missouri. Josh Hawley at HawleyMO. Tonight, while I was in Missouri, Antifa scumbags came to our place in DC and threatened my wife and newborn daughter who can't travel. They screamed threats, vandalized, and tried to pound open our door. Let me be clear, my family and I will not be intimidated by left-wing violence. Now, for those of you who may not know, Josh Hawley is a U.S. Senator, and he recently announced that he is going to object to the certification of the Electoral College's votes, which led to a group of protesters arriving at his home in DC to protest. Now, this is a little reminiscent of Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon, where you have two people seeing the exact same thing, both of them seeing it exactly differently. Luckily, there is, in fact, a video of the incident which was posted online, and I'll include a link to that below and a snippet from that video because it's about 50 minutes long at the end of this vlog. You can come to your own conclusions, but let's start with how the news reported on this. By Michael Balsamo of the Associated Press. Police. Protesters outside Senator Josh Hawley's home were peaceful. Protesters who gathered outside the Virginia home of Republican Senator Josh Hawley on Monday evening were peaceful, and they left when police explained they were violating local picketing laws, police said Tuesday. The Missouri senator on Twitter accused the protesters of vandalism and threatening his family. Officers were called to Hawley's home in Vienna, a Washington suburb, around 7:45 p.m. after someone reported that there were, quote, people protesting in front of the house, end quote. Officers who responded to the scene found that the, quote, people were peaceful, end quote, said Master Police Officer Juan Vasquez, a spokesman for the town of Vienna Police Department. The demonstrators said they went to Hawley's home because he said he would object when Congress convenes Wednesday to affirm Joe Biden's election victory. There is arguably a lot of spin in that description of what happened, but let's just break it down to the bare essentials. You have a group of protesters arriving at a politician's private residence in the night to protest using bullhorns, as you will see in the video, because they don't like a decision the politician is about to make. A group of protesters arriving at night at a politician's private residence, and by the policeman's own account, they were in fact breaking the law. In fact, according to Vasquez himself, they were breaking a number of laws. Vasquez said the protesters had been violating several laws, including a Virginia code about picketing in front of a house, a town ordinance about making noise in front of a home, and a littering code. But he said the officers explained the violations and, quote, everyone just left. Quote, there were no issues, no arrests, he said. Quote, we didn't think it was that big of a deal, end quote. You may not think it's a big deal when a group of protesters arrives on someone else's property at night, breaking several laws. You may feel that way because it's not your property, it's not your wife, and it's not your family. Just throwing that out there for everyone to consider. And then later on in the article, because the bad facts always come further on into the article when fewer people are likely to have read to that point, the article explains what happened. The group, Shut Down DC, posted a nearly hour-long video that showed about a dozen protesters arriving at Hawley's home, chanting and shouting through a megaphone, walking up to his doorstep, waving signs, and writing on the sidewalk with chalk. The video shows the group meeting in a nearby parking lot, discussing how they plan to protest and chant in front of his home, and then shows them walking about 2 blocks to his home. Outside the home, they lit candles, chanted through megaphones, and held signs that read, quote, respect the votes, Trump lost, end quote, and, quote, you don't have the votes, end quote. The activists also also said they were leaving a copy of the US Constitution on Hawley's doorstep before a group of 3 people walked up to the stoop. At one point in the video, police arrive at the home and one officer can be heard asking, quote, "Can we maybe quiet down until we have a supervisor out here?" End quote. At least 3 officers can be seen standing on the sidewalk in front of Hawley's home. So make what you will of that description as it compares to the video of the event and the clip I'm going to show you at the end of this video, but can we appreciate also that not only did they do what the article just described that they did, but they basically showed the entire way to Hawley's home. They showed the way to Hawley's private residence and then posted it on the internet for hundreds of thousands of people to see. Some may call that peaceful protest, others may call that doxing and targeted harassment. I guess it's just a question of perspective these days, right? But that is not where the story ends. There was the incident, there was the tweet, and there was the mainstream media trying to spin it as though everything that happened is totally appropriate. There's nothing inappropriate or potentially intimidating about a group of people showing up at your private residence at night, protesting with bullhorns and approaching your front door, if only to leave a copy of the Constitution on your steps. The media runs its partisan fact check and comes to the conclusion that Josh Hawley's tweet was inaccurate, that these were peaceful protests, and Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, heart that tweet. Jack liked St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Police, protesters outside Senator Josh Hawley's home were, quote, peaceful. Now, in the Twitterverse, we often say that a retweet is not an endorsement. We retweet things that we don't necessarily agree with, but we don't typically heart tweets with which we don't agree. A retweet is not an endorsement, but an endorsement is an endorsement, and a heart is an endorsement. And although I was shocked, I was not surprised that Jack, the CEO of Twitter, would heart this article that effectively condones doxing a politician. An article that describes nothing less than doxing a politician's wife and their newborn by showing a video that shows you exactly how to get to their residence. And I took to Twitter to express my discontent. Not surprisingly, @Jack liked this tweet. When a group of people show up at your private home at night to protest a political decision you're making, that is not, quote, peaceful protest. That is targeted harassment. Very interesting to see the spin that the CEO of Twitter endorses. And then I posted a screenshot of the article highlighting certain elements that I thought made my point and tweeted that as well. Protesters who gathered outside the Virginia home of Republican Senator Josh Hawley Monday evening were peaceful, and they left when police explained they were violating local picketing laws, police said Tuesday. The demonstrators said they went to Hawley's home because he said he would object when Congress convenes Wednesday to affirm Joe Biden's election victory. Twitter has an anti-doxing policy. Twitter has a policy against targeted harassment because, after all, even according to Jack, we want Twitter to be an inclusive place where people are not intimidated into silence. Yet it would seem that Jack just specifically endorsed an article that specifically condoned both doxing and targeted harassment. Call me old-fashioned, but I do not think a group of protesters gathering at night, documenting the journey of how to get to a politician's private residence for the purposes of protesting a political decision to be peaceful protest. Peaceful protest is not the absence of throwing stones through windows, knocking down doors, or setting things on fire, although we are probably exactly one step away from that happening when these types of situations are condoned in the first place. As far as I am concerned, this is targeted harassment for political purposes, and you may disagree, but I gotta tell you something. You lived through that experience once, and it will probably change your mind. But alas, because we live in a world of one screen, two films, Rashomon, where a group of people can see the exact same thing and derive exactly opposite conclusions, let's have a look at 1 minute of the video so you can come to your own conclusion.
Coming to our community, DC has a mass mandate. Our coronavirus cases are twice as high as they were on March when the pandemic first came out. 9 months later, 10 months later, our government is allowing thousands of individuals to come to our city with no mask on, knowing that coronavirus cases are big as hell. So therefore, we're going to hold people accountable and hold political officials accountable who are trying to swindle the election, swindle democracy, and don't give a rat's ass about the American people. So when democracy is under attack, what do we do? What do we do? When democracy is under attack, what do we do? What do we do?
That is the clip. You can watch the entire video if you want. You can come to your own conclusions. Would you feel intimidated if you were the parent in that house with your child and you saw that on your front doorstep? And even if you happen to consider this to be perfectly appropriate peaceful protest, it is probably not the best precedent to be set that the CEO of Twitter publicly condones this type of conduct. With that said, I had better get back to the house because I've noticed that I have missed a lot of texts and it is my turn to play tag team parenting with my wife. But if you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm.
Feed me Seymour. Feed me all night long.
If you want to support the channel, all of these support links are in the pinned comment. We've got PayPal, Patreon, subscribe to our YouTube membership. Robert Barnes and I have a page on locals. It is called vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I'm on Rumble, but more important than any of that, take care of yourselves, check in on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace out.